What are the commonalities among leaders who sustain excellence over an extended period of time?
All right, Mike. Michalowicz, it's so good to talk with you here. So I was thinking of many different places to start, and I found this one tweet of yours actually that really piqued my curiosity. And you said, quote, "As I was writing Get Different," which is your latest book, you said, "I came up with this marketing technique, and I've always have a mobile Wi-Fi access point with me when in airports, conferences, cafes, and other locations where people gather, idea for Wi-Fi access marketing." And when I looked at that, I was like, what does that even mean? What's he talking about? And I looked at the picture you posted, and you actually have created Wi-Fi that say like, get profit first on Amazon, or get the pumpkin plan on Amazon. Tell me more about this. I never thought of this. This is a genius idea though. Tell me more about this.
It's literally in my car. I'm just, after this, I'm heading out to a meeting, and I'm going to broadcast into the building. So I noticed on a flight, this is maybe 6 months ago when I came up with this idea, I was trying to hop on, I was on United, trying to hop on their free Wi-Fi on the plane or whatever it is. And I noticed as we're boarding, some guy had like a joke hotspot, said like the CIA or something. I was like, oh, that's cute. That's cute. I was like, hold on, wait, I'm seeing some other person's phone. And I started to just think about it real quickly. It's like, oh my gosh, what if I bought a wireless access point? And you can get these things for like $25 on Amazon. They're cheap. And a wireless access point is like a router in a building. It broadcasts at a much higher level than a phone hotspot. Like you can actually get a whole plane covered with one WAP, wireless access point, or a whole conference room. So, and I connected to a battery, the one that you'd use to recharge your phone or whatever, and that'll last like 6 to 10 hours. And when it's my trip, when I'm heading out and traveling, and it's happening again, kind of now that we're in this new COVID standard, I turn it on my backpack I'm carrying with me. As I walk through an airport, it's on. And when I sit down at my terminal, people are, everyone's trying to hop on the free Wi-Fi. They're seeing buy profit first on Amazon. When on the plane, same thing. I do turn it off when they say turn off the Wi-Fi. And then when I go to a conference room to do a presentation, I'll go first thing in the morning and ask the AV guy. I'll say, hey, do you mind if I just leave my bag here for the day? Because I'll be speaking later. He's like, yeah, no problem. Well, it's my wireless access point. And I'm broadcasting to the room. So as people are walking in, and before any speakers go, and there could be a line of like, 5 or 6 speakers that day, they see like the message I want them to see. Buy Get Different on Amazon, or like you will be blown away by Mike Michalowicz's presentation. Any message I want.
You'll put that like in as like the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, totally. And people come up to me. I remember some guy came up to me. He's like, dude, they're marketing you on the Wi-Fi system. You can't believe this. You must be a big deal. I'm like, no, I'm sneaky. I'm a sneaky bastard is what it is.
Well, I love it when there's really good alignment. So your latest book's called Get Different, and it's really focused on marketing. We're going to dig in a second. But when somebody has a message, but then when you see like the way they behave or the way they live, there isn't really alignment. It's a bummer, it's like, oh, what's going on here? It's not really authentic. In your sense, it feels to me like you are always living your, whether it's profit first or pumpkin plan or Clockwork. I mean, any of your books, and certainly with Get Different now with marketing, maybe share a little bit about like living in alignment with what you preach to others.
Yeah. So, there's this concept of pivot that's around, and I think it's actually a very harmful concept, but it's so popular. The idea is this, is whatever you offer, if the customer's not buying it, you're screwed. That's the truth. So pivot or change your offering to match the customer. And if they're still not buying, you got to keep on pivoting, changing until you get demand. Well, here's the problem. I've seen people pivot their businesses into something they loathe. They can't stand that they're going to work and doing this. The customer may be served, but they're not served. So I think the fact is we need to pursue alignment. Alignment is, of course, selling what will serve our customer base, but also is true to us. That brings us joy. And when that's in alignment, you're going to be explosively successful. I mean, customers, could you imagine you have like a brain tumor and you meet with your doctor, and before she starts the operation, she's like, I freaking hate this line of work. I can't believe I'm a brain surgeon. It's so miserable. You wouldn't believe what I have to experience. I hate this. Okay, let's get started. You're like, your life is on the line. You're like, let's put this on pause for a little bit. And that's what we're doing to our customers. We're like, I hate this, but I'm going to deliver my best to you. That's bullshit. You can't. Yeah. So we have to be in alignment. Be true to yourself. Deliver what's consistent with that. And there is a customer base seeking what is true to us and deliver consistently. It's just, the best of us will come out of that.
How did you find that for yourself? I think it's best to we teach through real examples, because you've sold multiple multi-million-dollar businesses, you've invested, you've lost, you've come back, right? You've got there's a good story, there's a good roller coaster of events in your life. How did you find this alignment for you?
When I find that I can't wait to come to work and I can't wait to get home, that's the other key. Then I'm in that alignment stage, because that means I'm looking that the balance is naturally presenting itself. I'm excited about all the elements of my life. Some people can't wait to get to work and they wish they could stay there because they don't want to go home. There's a problem there. Others wanted to stay home and drink an extra cup of coffee and skip the work. Well, there's a problem there. And I had a business, we were doing computer crime investigation. We pivoted, actually, this is a great example. We pivoted the offering to serve a specific community, which was defense counsel, attorneys that were doing defense work, because there was huge demand there for forensic investigations. As a result, we actually did part of the Enron trial. My company was representing Kenneth Lay, Andrew Fastow, those people through their attorneys. And it was huge money. So that side was being served. But I remember, I'm like, I hate doing what I'm doing. There was this moral conflict. It wasn't like we were doing anything wrong. We were just finding evidence and producing it. But it seemed like a game of actually milking people for money just to provide evidence when you knew they were already guilty. And they were very guilty. So there was this conflict. And I remember I tried to kind of avoid work. I wouldn't want to go there. Or if I was there, I kind of hid myself in the corner. It was very subconscious. But when I made that a conscious awareness, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm out of alignment. Selling that company was extraordinary because we sold it. It was extraordinary because I got out of that business. That was actually the best part.
And now you're helping other people do that.
Not get out of business, but find the business.
Right. I think I mentioned that when I bring up your name, one of the first things that comes up is profit first. And sometimes either a financial advisor or an entrepreneur / business owner, where they're like, you got to pay yourself first or profit first. And so maybe I'm going to get to different in a second, but can you give kind of the high level on what's the synopsis of profit first?
Yeah, of course. There was what I believe was a profound study that so few of us are aware of. It was conducted by US Bank. This is about 15 years ago. It was, I think the SBA was a participant too, and they were just studying small business. The SBA defines a small business by a company that does $25 million US in annual revenue or less. 97% of us are small business. And the study found that 83% of small business is in an immediate, imminent cash crisis, meaning we're living check by check. 83% of businesses don't have enough money today to pay this month's bills, employees, the owner themselves to pay their own salary. So they're compromising something. Usually the owner actually doesn't even pay themselves. And it's just check to check survival. It's constant panic. The stress is unbelievable. And I'm like, this is what confounded me. If we go into business in part for financial freedom, I think actually that's one primary reason everyone goes into business. So I don't have to worry about bills, financial freedom. How come that's the one thing that doesn't happen? That makes no sense. We do it for this, but no one's getting it. And I said, what's wrong with us? I first looked at myself. I'm like, why am I so dumb? Why can't I figure this out? And then I realized the foundational formula that you and I've been taught, Ryan, is wrong. We are told sales minus expenses equals profit. It's called a GAAP standard, the generally accepted accounting principles. It's the foundational formula. And it does make logical sense. Income minus what you spend, what's left over is profit. But it doesn't make behavioral sense. It's human nature. When something comes first, it gets prioritized and gets done. If you love your family, you definitely say, I put them first. You don't say, I love my family. That's why I've chosen to put them last. Like whatever comes last is something that is not significant. And what we're told in that formula is profit comes last. And it's so pervasive, it's actually in our vernacular. We call profit the bottom line last, the year end last. And so for most businesses, it's literally once a year we look, at our tax return, something and say, oh shit, no profit, maybe next year. So profit first is a simple flip of the formula. It's sales minus profit equals expenses. What I'm doing here, it's a behavioral mechanism, is we're prioritizing what's truly we want is profit. In practice, as revenue comes into our company, we take a predetermined percentage, 5 or 10, maybe 15 or 20, whatever the percentage is, as profit. So cash comes in, we take the cash, we transfer it somewhere else, we hide it away from ourselves, and then the remainder is what you run your business off of. It's a form of reverse engineering your profit. And honestly, it's the pay yourself first principle we've been told is the most effective savings principle in our personal lives, simply applied to our business.
Love it. Okay. And now one of the parts about a business, and I think this applies too to someone running a team within a business, even if you don't own it, is the fact that a lot of people hear marketing or sales and they get weird or they feel icky in some sense. Oh, I don't want to be self-promotional or feel like that type of person, or maybe we've had a bad experience with a sales person or somebody who we don't like the way they market something. And so you've written that the biggest barrier to marketing is fear.
Yeah.
Can you share more about this, your overall mindset and philosophy on marketing, and why most people need to be more intentional about thinking this?
Yeah. So I'll address the fear first and then how we can kind of flip fear. The fear is biologically wired into us. It's a survival mechanism. The getting noticed was dangerous. So, but go back to the caveman days. If you're hunting prey, but you're loud, the prey would run away. If you were noticed by something hunting you, like a pack of wolves or something, you got noticed. So you wanted to be very cautious about standing out. So the irony, though, the only way to get noticed when you're seeking demand is by standing out. So it kind of works against our behavioral wiring. The interesting thing is, you'll hear all the time too, is people want to stand out. I want to get noticed. But the truth is, we want to get noticed without being noticeable. We want to stand out without having to stand out. So there's this conflict that's going on internally. So for most of us, we say, but my business is so great, it's of such great service, but no one discovers me, because we don't overcome that fear. So technique to overcome that fear is a reframing. And what the reframing is to realize that your clients are starving to notice you. Your prospects, I should say, are starving to notice you, but they're not noticing you because you don't stand out. Now, here's why they're starving to notice you. It's real simple. When we look at our own business, we can ask ourselves, are we better than the alternatives? Maybe not in every capacity, but in some capacity. Do we present our product more efficiently? Are we more cost effective? Do we care more? Are we faster in our service? What is it about us that's better? And if you can say, yes, I am definitively better in this category, that means if your clients don't hire you, it's of disservice to them. If they hire the competition who's providing an inferior offer and yours is superior, but they hire competition, that's the client's problem, but it's your fault. You didn't make yourself noticeable. So the only way to be of service to clients is by marketing. We have a responsibility to market. We have to get to the point where the customer can make a cognitive decision on whether to proceed with us or not. If you have a customer saying, you know what, I don't want to hire you, congratulations, because that means you got to the level of being noticed and they made a decision that they've concluded is in their best interest. But if you get to the point where clients are hiring others without ever discovering you, that's a real problem. And as I do my research, I would say that's about 99% of small businesses. They never get noticed. And it's real easy to find out. When I'm at a conference, or even I do this online, I'll ask people by show of hands, tell me if this is your primary source of lead flow. Word of mouth. and almost all the hands go up. And it's like almost braggadocious, right? My clients love me so much. They tell me to tell others about me to hire me. I'm that great. And it is an acknowledgement that your product or service is good, but it also means you're at the whim of that client doing your marketing for you.
Yeah.
So we have a responsibility to market because we're superior to our alternatives. And we have to take control over that. We have to have control over the throttle.
What about from a branding perspective? Like, to make it more personal, I'll focus on my work.
Yeah.
So my podcast is called The Learning Leader Show. The leadership space has 17 bazillion people in it who are writing books, doing podcasts, keynote speaking, everything. And one of the things you talk about, I mean, the book is titled Get Different. And so if we had to use me as a real life example, and I know you don't have all of the information you need to diagnose if we were like working together.
Yeah, but let's do it.
But we'll do our best with it. And, so by basis of my title, from a branding perspective, my favorite leaders are the ones who are always working on themselves, are striving to get better. They never fully feel like they've got it all figured out. They're just striving to kind of be like this, this upward trajectory. And the ones that have impacted me the most have that mindset. And so what's some of the general pieces of advice you give to someone like me who plays in a space that, now the good thing is there is plenty out there to get. There's plenty. I mean, there's a lot of people who are in demand of this, which is nice.
Yeah, it's great.
There's also, like I said, a ton of people doing it. What are some of the ways you would get different, or what are some ways you would differentiate or think about this if you were someone in my position?
Yeah. So we're going to use the DAD framework model here. I explain that and Get Different, but the first D stands for differentiate. The reason why this is important is the only way to get noticed is to stand out from the white noise. There's this whole, and I explain in the book, but there's this whole mechanism going on in our brain called habituation. Basically, our brains are designed to ignore until something is a threat or an opportunity or unexpected. Because when something unexpected presents itself, we have to determine, is this a threat or opportunity? So our opportunity in marketing and building our brand is to do with the unexpected, the inconsistent with the standard white noise. And now we have to get evaluated. But the second part of the framework is A for DAD, stands for attract. Whatever we do must be attractive. So I'm not a proponent for outrageous marketing. Yeah, you could wear a chicken suit and I guarantee people will say, oh my God, there's Ryan, I see you. But then they'll say, I think he's an idiot. He's wearing a chicken suit, and you're done. It has to be compelling to the audience. They have to say, oh, this is an opportunity for me. It serves me, it entertains me, it engages me, but it has to serve me. The last D stands for direct, meaning we have to give them a specific action to take. Now that we have their attention and they see us as an opportunity, what do we want them to do? But it simply needs to be reasonable. I can't say, hey, you're a leader, give me $100,000 and we'll talk about coaching you. That's absurd. But maybe they're willing to give us their contact information so we can have an initial dialogue. So in your case, my first question to you, Ryan, is when it comes to your contemporaries, your competition, what's the standard or best practice used to market their businesses? Maybe you follow it too, by the way.
Probably books.
They write books.
They write books. They have great highlight videos. I would say some of the ones that I personally follow are good from a content production standpoint, whether they write articles or they publish podcasts. Podcasts obviously have grown a lot. So those seem to be the main ways to get eyes on your work.
Okay. So books, video, some form of online content.
Right.
So here's the challenge with best practices. Usually best practices are the least effective marketing techniques because it's become habituated.
Yep.
I'll give you an example. First time I got an email that started off with, hey friend, years back, I was like, oh my gosh, I got to check this out because I don't know who this friend is, but this friend's calling me a friend. Who is this friendly friend? I was like totally engaged. But halfway through, I was like, oh, this is some cheesy marketing message. So the second hey friend that came through was like, is this a real friend or is this bullshit? By third hey friend, I've never read a hey friend ever again. That's habituation. We see something as, oh, this is simply a solicitation that's of no value, ignore. And so if every one of my contemporaries is doing books, one of the things that comes immediately to mind is doing a book it's going to be very hard to differentiate myself because they've become habituated to it. I better make that hey friend blinking and super big and red to even get noticed. So my first consideration is, what can I do that no one else is doing? So here's an example of what comes to mind, because I saw this in another industry. And this, by the way, is a strategy that I suggest everyone does, is it's R&D other industries. And when I say R&D, I mean rip off and duplicate other industries. Look how other people are effectively marketing, what the best practices are elsewhere. And if they're not best practices in your industry, it's actually going to be likely highly effective. So what I hear is, you're talking to pretty high level people. This sounds like C-suite or near C-suite. Okay, that's pretty big people with big decisions they're making. Mm-hmm. But also it can mean pretty big egos. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but you're responsible for a lot of stuff.
For sure.
So what comes to mind is ego play. Well, what happens is I found that those people respond to interviews. In fact, when I was serving defense attorneys, also, you have a big ego to be in that industry. Those people, they didn't respond when I called them and said, hey, I have a service to offer. But they did respond when I said, hey, I'd love to interview you because I'm looking to improve a service. And you're such an authority. I thought you'd be willing to give me strategic feedback. I'll take 10 minutes of your time. And sure enough, I start getting an onslaught of calls. So one of the first ideas that comes from mind is steal an idea from soliciting defense attorneys and apply it to VPs and Cs and simply say, I'm looking to enhance my service offering that serves to a community like yours. But honestly, I don't know what the perfect solution is. You are an authority in this space. Would you be willing to give me 10 or 15 minutes of your time simply to render your advice and opinion on what I should do? Now, you have to be authentic here, right? We talked about it earlier. You can't try to flip this into a sales call. The goal here is to simply truly learn from them, which, by the way, is the best rapport mechanism in the world. Now someone's teaching you and you're thankful and grateful for it. At the end of that interview, you say, listen, I like to package what I learned from you and come back to you and see if I've developed now what you believe to be the ideal package. Do I have your permission to come back and learn more from you? Chances are you'll get a yes. More rapport building. At a certain point, I've seen people flip the table. They say, this is exactly what a company like ours needs. Are you doing this? Because we got to hire you, because they developed it for you. So that's a strategy that if your contemporaries aren't using, will give you a strategic advantage, in my opinion.
I like that. When I was recording with Ryan Peterson, he's the CEO of Flexport. He said, I think this is an investing piece of advice. He said, when you want money, ask for advice. Yep. When you want advice, ask for money. And I thought, oh, it's so true. When you think about that, you know what I mean? Because if I go to you and say, Mike, hey, I'm raising this money, I need you to support me, I want you to back me, you'd be like, all right, Ryan, let me help you out here. And you give me some advice, versus I go to you like, you are the man, I need help. Wait a second, this guy's smart. He's reaching out to me. But I like the second part for sure. In the fact that I've actually probably stumbled into that without having any strategy, with the thought of genuinely trying to learn. And then as we go, we build an actual relationship.
Yep.
And the person is like, I like kind of how you approach this with curiosity. And then you are able to put things together, because not only are you interviewing him or her, you've probably done it with 10 to 15 or more others who are out there. And now you've actually built something that is very useful and practical, because you're doing your own research in a sense of figuring out how to put something together. I really think that's a fascinating piece of advice, especially playing on the fact that the people you're talking to probably have a bit of an ego, even if they may try to claim they don't.
Totally. And we all have an ego. And I don't think ego is necessarily a negative thing.
Yeah.
But what's happening right now is you're leveraging my ego. I want to promote Get Different.
Yeah.
You're interviewing me, which is actually forming reciprocity. I'm like, well, Ryan's helping me out and he's really curious in what I'm saying. This is a good guy. So a podcaster is actually has an advantage because we know the decorum to maintain in a situation like this. And like you said, if it's genuine, it's going to serve you.
Yeah. Well, I've found one of the things that why I started this 6.5 years ago was purely as a form of a leadership PhD program. I got my MBA, but I
Cool.
nixed the idea of going back for more from a college perspective, because I liked like 20% of the process of getting my MBA and I disliked most of it.
Yeah.
And I just rethought, well, wouldn't it be more fun to choose my own professors and then follow my own curiosity with each of those people? And then who knows what could happen if I choose to publish those conversations. And you're more apt to talk to me if we're recording it and publishing it. If we're able to build a platform, then that could just get me access to more people to help me. First, like the audience initially was just me, and then it could potentially help other people. And I think what happens is you form these like real relationships where I've become friends, have had dinner, have gone to events with people and hung out with them just from starting like you and I right now, which I think is one of the coolest things ever.
I did the same thing. So I wanted to associate with fellow authors who are playing at a whole different level. So I wrote a list of business authors or people that are touching the business genre that includes like Don Miller, Ryan Holiday, James Clear, who wrote Atomic Habits, Malcolm Gladwell. And then I said, how do I can interview these folks, but they're constantly getting contact with interviews. What's different? I said, they probably want access to each other just to learn quirky tips and stuff. And sure enough, this is a year ago, I put together an event of these experts. And I was now a fly in the wall, but an active participant because I was the one who facilitated it. And Don Miller was so into it. He's like, you know what? I'll host this at my house. I'll pay for all the hosting expenses just to get everyone down here. So I remember walking in and I'm in a room with Ryan Holiday. He wrote The Daily Stoic. This guy, John Gordon, James Clear of Atomic Habits.
Yeah, all these guys have been on the show.
Oh, have they?
Every person you mentioned so far, which is awesome.
Oh, good, good.
Yeah.
Don. So all of us got together and I'm sitting here. Look, I'm like, I cannot believe I'm with this crew.
How'd you do this? I'm going to steal this one for sure. I'm going to try.
So easy.
How did you do this? Like the getting them on Zoom is pretty it's easy.
Yeah.
Getting them all together in the same place at the same time, now that's a whole nother ballgame. How do you do this?
Yeah. So it starts off with a what if. So I was in contact with Don Miller, so I had the closest relationship with him among all of those guys. Maybe this other guy, John Rulin, who wrote Giftology.
Sure.
And I said, hey, what if I could get Malcolm Gladwell and James Clear and Jeff Walker's another guy, in a room together? Would that be something of value to you? And Don's like, yeah, that'd be awesome. I said, what if we spent a day together? And he said, that'd be awesome. I said, okay, well, that's my mission. I'm going to make this happen. Would you be a willing participant if I do it? And as a founding father, and that's actually an important thing, is to assign a title of importance. So I think there's a video out there, which I'm going to kind of paraphrase, but it's a guy dancing this really weird dance. He's at a concert and he just kind of looks like this weird hippie. And so people are kind of looking at him and kind of laughing at him because he's this weird dancer guy. And there's a voiceover saying, this is the spark, but he's not the most important person. Then you see a second person join and start dancing with this guy. And then the voiceover says, that's not the most important person. They're about to come, but this person at least confirms he's not alone anymore. It's the third person that's going to start the waterfall effect. And this third person gets to dance, and all of a sudden you see this herd, and now the whole community, like hundreds of people, are dancing this wacky, wacky dance. Don Miller, number one was me. Don Miller was now a confirmation Mike's not a wacko. Once I got the third person to commit, the waterfall kicked in. I think the third person in this case was John Rulin, the author of Giftology. And then now I could reach out, and I had an army, right? So when I reached out to James Clear, I said, you wouldn't believe this, but Don Miller's hosting his house, and your name came up between me, John, and Don. Would you want to come? And James like, yeah. And I'm like, yes. And then now I go to Chris Gallibo and say, James Clear is coming, and so-and-so. And Chris Gallibo's like, hey, what if Ryan Holiday showed up? I'm like, what's his number? Ryan Holiday popped in. And so that's how you do it. Here's the interesting thing about human nature. I don't care what level people are performing at. It seems like almost no one wants to organize stuff. It's a pain in the ass because it's herding cats. Simply be the cat herderer, and then you get invited into a group like that.
How was the meeting? What did you guys do?
Oh my God. I actually wrote about it in Get Different. It was life-changing. And I can actually attribute For me, hundreds of thousands of dollars of money.
Really?
To one comment, yeah, from Ryan Holiday.
What was it?
So I'm sitting there, and the part of the agenda was to share actually marketing tips. And I dropped this idea down of how I've been marketing books. What I've been doing is I actually started my own used bookstore on Amazon. I have a few employees here, and one of my colleagues is running this. And if you buy a used copy, say of Profit First, it would say you're about to get a dented and damaged book of Profit First. It's kind of scribbled up, but we'd actually give you a brand new one. So when you received it now, there's this moment you open it up and it says, congratulations, you've been upgraded to a brand new book. And I'm like, this is genius, because now people are surprised. They're delighted before I read my book, 5-star review. And Ryan Holiday, Ryan's a quirky guy. He doesn't make eye contact with me, staring at the fireplace. He just says, that's fucking stupid. Right? That's it. And there's like silence. And I could feel the tears like welling up. Ryan's like half my age, right? And I'm, in my head, I'm like, this young son of a bitch, right? And I'm sinking down in my chair. I may have soiled my pants a little bit. And then I'm like, what are you talking about, Ryan? He goes, dude, onesie, twosie. He's like, the question is, how do you sell hundreds of thousands of books or millions of books at a time? Not onesie, twosies. And then he told me, number one thing you got to do is you go to your publisher and you got to get an advance so big that they're shaking in their boots. And he started kind of lining this thing out. So fast forward, I called my publisher for Get Different, and I asked for, I call it the Stephen King advance. It was equivalent to his first advance on a book he wrote called Carrie. And when it went mainstream, which was a big advance, and I asked for that, and the publisher was shaking in their boots, and they gave it to me.
Really?
So then I text Ryan. I'm like, dude, you made me hundreds of thousands of dollars in advance. Thank you. And the only response was NP, which is so Ryan Holiday. Just said NP, no problem. And never heard from him again.
Wow.
That meeting did that for me.
Thinking of like, I think this being the organizer thing is it can be useful. So let me pull on this thread for a second. So by doing that though, one, you got everybody together, right? And this is something I'm doing. I'm running a small little workshop for my leadership circles coming up. So I'm thinking it's like top of mind. I was planning yesterday actually. And one, you get everybody together, which is critical. But then when you get everybody there, you can't mess it up. You mess it up, then like they're never going to come back. So like, what are some of the ways that you make that an awesome experience when you're the organizer / host? I know Don was helping, but like, what are some of the ways that you make sure that experience is a great one?
I think two things we did that was great. Well, three things. One was, what do you want out of this? So it wasn't my agenda. It was their agenda. I think that's a mistake that an organizer does, is they say, well, what do I want to get out of this? And now we're catering to me. My objective was just to be connected with these folks so that not at the meeting, but subsequently I could reach out and ask questions. James Clear is a good example. I assume he's pretty inaccessible because of his popularity of books. And I text him and I'll get a response right away. And he'll go back and forth. He had a question for me recently. What's interesting too, though, is you got to protect those relationships. Now that I have a connection with James Clear and these other guys, and I share that I do, someone will say, hey, can you hook me up? I want James Clear to speak at my event, or I want to talk to Ryan Holiday. And it's like, no, I'm not going to compromise these relationships. I'll ask them, say, hey, a friend's trying to contact you. Where should I send them? But I'm not going to just start saying, hey, because now you're abusing that relationship. So first is, what do you want? Second is, what are you going to contribute? And I think a lot of people don't ask that. Don Miller to me is a big freaking deal. So to say that almost feels offensive. But if I don't stage that, now it's all expectation for him to get benefit alone, perhaps. So I said, hey, Don, what do you want to get out of this? And I said, and what can you bring to the table? And then he responded, he goes, I can bring the table. He's like, let's host this at my place. And it was something I never expected. The last thing is make it freaking easy, friction free. So I put together the agenda based upon what the guys contributed. But I also said, here's the best airport to fly in. Here's the hotels. I have an assistant that actually blocked rooms for us. I just made it so it's as easy as possible, because every time there's a headache along the way, there's a potential that that's going to it's going to have people reverse their thought and say, I don't know, I shouldn't go.
Yeah.
The last thing is be fluid. I just remember this. Right, like a day before, Don says, hey, opportunity came up. Maybe we can make a change to the agenda. And so I'm like, what is it? He's like, a friend of mine invited us over for cigars and whiskey. I thought maybe all of us could go over. I'm like, okay, which friend is it? He's like, Dave Ramsey. I'm like, Dave, are you? Yeah. And so this agenda that I envisioned, I'm like, screw that. And there we were at Dave Ramsey's house that night.
Wow. Love it. Okay. Just a couple more things about Get Different. So, there are marketing, like I think having a plan is not always, useful, but the act of planning almost always is. And so I'm curious, when it comes to having a marketing plan, why do so many marketing plans seem to fall on their face and not work out?
Yeah. So, there's that saying, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Yep. There's something even worse. If you plan a failing plan, that is even worse. And that's what I actually see, because I see people taking these pot shots. They say, oh my gosh, everyone's doing Facebook ads. I got to hop on that and do Facebook ads. Or everyone, I heard Instagram's a hot thing, or everyone in my market's doing this. We're just cloning what others do without really investigating and measuring and setting up an ROI. So the reason, when I wrote Get Different, I don't call them marketing plans or marketing ideas. I call them experiments. And that selection of the word experiments was very significant, because an experiment inherently to it, the definition is there's expectations for failure. Things won't work. But that doesn't mean the experience failed itself. It simply means you found a way not to do it. So we need to do marketing experiments first. That WAP thing we talked about earlier, that wireless access point, that's an experiment. It's very hard to measure. I'm getting some subjective feedback like, hey, they're marketing you, but I really don't know the measurement return. Actually, right behind me on this video, that tree there, that bookshelf, is actually a result out of the Get Different experiments. What I did was similar to your situation. I asked, what do my contemporaries do? And I said, well, every author has a bookshelf behind them showing their books. Okay, so that's the one thing not to do. But I want to prominently display my books. What can I do? And I started putting up, I started looking into alternative book cases that present in a different way. Well, one thing I did was also I measured, when I do like a webinar or something in Zoom, the chats are downloadable after the fact. And I go through the chats, and the chats are often a download of what's going through people's minds. They're like, oh, that was funny, or this guy's weird, or hey, what's that bookshelf in the background? Isn't that interesting? And I started to see that people were responding to an odd bookshelf over a standard one. And that brought that about. We need to do experiments first to see what's working and try to put any measurements we can in place to see if it's working. Once it works, then we expand onto it, and then it becomes part of a plan. A plan to me means that there's a consistent rollout, but there's a set expectation for how it's going to perform. And if it's failing to meet that, we have to change it. And if it's exceeding that, we have to leverage that and enhance it. But start off with experiments, and experiments turn into plans.
You've also talked about how prospects consume marketing in like milliseconds. Can you share more about that?
Yeah, so I did pretty extensive research on how the brain operates. I spoke with brain surgeons, neurological doctors, behavioral psychologists, cognitive psychologists, all these different categories. And I found that the speed our brain processes information is, no pun intended, mind-blowing. There's this thing called the reticular formation as part of the brainstem. And what happens is we get inputs into our brainstem. And what it is our sight, our hearing, our smell, our touch. Those are our inputs. That's the data coming in. It hits this reticular formation, which includes this one component called the reticular activating system. They are different things. That's just part of it. The reticular formation is like a net that sits on the brainstem. Its primary job is to ignore most stimulus. So if we look around where we're sitting or standing right now, there's thousands of things you could consider. I have a letter opener here, and I could spend days evaluating this. Like, what's this made of? Steel. Who invented the word steel? How to make things sharp? What is sharp? Who invented the word sharp? Why is color? Blah, blah, blah. But my mind is ignoring it because the only way we can stay focused on something is by ignoring almost everything. That's a job of the reticular formation. But it does process three things: threats. There's something. If we went to a meeting, I'd plop down a gun and say, "Hey, Ryan, we have to have a serious conversation." I guarantee I've garnered your attention, but I'm at risk here for you punching me right in the face, breaking my schnoz, and maybe shooting me. So that's a very risky situation. The second thing is opportunity. I could plop down $1 million and say, "Hey, Ryan, I really want to talk with you." I will garner your attention again because the reticular formation says this is an opportunity. The risk, of course, is on me, is that you take the money and you leave. But the third thing the reticular formation opens up for is the unexpected. So if we were standing outside having a conversation and all of a sudden something squiggles in our periphery vision, we will jump back because it could be a threat, snake, could be inconsequential, someone turned the hose on, but we have to evaluate it. Or maybe it's an opportunity. So that all happens faster than a blink. The average blink takes us a little bit more than 1/10 of a second. Our mind, the reticular formation, processes faster than that. And that's why you'll notice next time you're surprised by a snake or spider or whatever, you'll notice that your body's actually moving back prior to any conscious thought. Like you're jumping back and then saying, "Oh shit." You're not saying "oh shit" and then jumping back. So that happens 1/10 of a second. But then when information comes up and hits what's called our prefrontal cortex, that's where conscious thought happens. Then our mind says, "Is this something I really should consider?" So we react, but then should we consider? And that all happens in these 1/10 of a second increments. So we're like, yes, no, I don't know, discard, or engage, or run away. So within 1/10 of a second, we have to be presenting an opportunity for this prospect. And the way to present opportunity in 1/10 of a second is relatability. This is for me. This person gets me. This is about me. That's why authenticity is so effective, because it's a natural way to communicate at a subconscious or very rapid speed. And every 1/10 of a second, the mind is saying, should I stay engaged with this? So we got to be delivering value, entertainment, education, serving a problem, invoking curiosity. And then as quickly as we can, once we've won over the conscious thought and we have the customer seeing this as an opportunity, then we present the direct. And the direct is a specific ask what to do. Now that you saw this, please give me your cell number so I can send you more information or something like that. But it has to be specific. Otherwise, at a certain point, those 1/10 of a second increments are no longer going to continue. They're going to say, the opportunity is lost here. There's no more value for me. I extracted everything I can. I'm out of here. Before that happens, you have to direct them to take the next step.
All right. Let me, really good. So thank you for that. The way that you reached out initially, I thought was different, was unique. I would imagine. So you get meta like all the time here. Like you're actually living again in alignment with what you teach.
Yeah.
You filmed a video, I think in that exact same studio, perfectly lit, sounded good. It was obvious that I would imagine I wasn't not the only person you sent a video to, but it was specific to me for that particular video. So you had to do some work in order to make it specific and not just like, let me spray and pray here. But that had to take a conscious choice and a decision to not only, because most people have a PR person send me an email that's like this long and download the new book or whatever. And there's probably about 25 to 30 of those per day. It's the most right? Per day. It's the most email I get by far. Yeah. Now, and I'm sure my email got on all the list of PR people, and some of them are good. And 98% of them are not. So yours caught my attention, one, because it was a video, and obviously I've heard of you and I know you from your work and know it's good. It's like, wow, Mike Michalowicz is sending me a video, and I watched it and it was personalized. And I just like you to share kind of like that way that you're different than most, that you're willing to say, hey, like, I'm not having my PR person do this. I'm doing it myself.
Totally.
I'm filming these. This is from me. Can you share more about that philosophy?
Yeah. So you shared the key word, Ryan, is most. You said most people have their PR agency. So that's exactly what not to do.
Mhm.
Now, I have insider access. I have a podcast, and similar, I get 25 emails a day.
Yeah.
And it's always the same. Starts off at the top. It says, great interview or interview guest or whatever.
Mm.
And then, of course, if you don't respond, it says, popping this back to the top of your, bubbling it back up to the top of your inbox.
Yeah.
So,
I
right?
love, or sometimes I love and then you see a copy and paste interview with like
in a different format.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway,
Anyway,
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they give a link back to your own website. Love your website, Michalowicz.com. Oh, thank you. Didn't know that was my site. So that's the most common. So that's the one thing to avoid. Then what we do is we use influence factors, which really I call them attractor factors, but there's a great book, Influence by Robert Cialdini, that talks about some of these. There's countless books about this. One of the most attractive things is our own name. And it relates back to survival. If you and I are having a conversation, but we're in a room and you hear someone say, "Oh, I heard this about Ryan Hawk," and you hear your name in the distance, like you may still kind of try to look at me, but you are engaged in that conversation. It's a survival mechanism. What are they saying about me?
Yeah.
So we have to pay attention to our own name. So that's a critical factor. And that's why I used, signs, "Hey, Ryan." And I start off by saying, "Hey, Ryan, this is really for you." So, this is about you and for you. Then what I did is I did video because most people won't send video. Most people will use text again. So it's a differentiator factor. And what I'm trying to do is also invoke curiosity. Also, you got to do these quick. I know I got you for 1/10 of a second increments. So if I go on for 5 minutes about this, your interest is going to wane very quickly. Mm-hmm. So how do I get the message across quickly, but also do it in a short time? And the last element is, this ain't about me. I mean, for me, it's about me, but for you, it's about you. If I come and say, "Hey, Ryan, I will be an amazing guest. You need me because I'm promoting my book. My book's fucking awesome." And you're like, "Screw you, dude."
Yeah.
If I say, "Hey, Ryan, I don't know if I'm perfect for you, but here's what I know about your show. And if you think I would serve that, I would be honored to be on your show because I do have a selfish reason to be on there." The key is this. I first speak to what I think you want, but acknowledging I may not know it, because that's offensive. If I say, "You need me, this will serve you," it's like, screw you. Right. So what I think. But the second thing is, people don't then acknowledge, they do that, they don't acknowledge their own selfish reason. We have to do that. We have to say why we are looking to do this and what we're looking to gain out of it, because there's a currency. If I don't say, "Hey, the reason I'm trying to do this is I want to talk about Get Different," what's going to happen in your mind, the consumer's mind, is like, well, what is he trying to get out of this? And then we conclude something that may be wrong. Oh, he's trying to get my list. That's what that son of a bitch is trying to do. He's trying to get all of my list and going to somehow sneak it down and then start emailing people. Screw this guy. So I have to give a justification authentically, but if I don't provide that, it's going to confuse, and then I'm going to lose out the opportunity.
Yeah, well, it's well done, obviously.
Thanks, bro.
So I really like.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course. I have one final question that I don't know. Maybe it'll relate to what we've talked about. Maybe not. But I think you're just a really interesting dude, so it's worth asking this question. So there's somebody who's probably a bit earlier in their career. Maybe they just graduated college and they've got a job for a year or two, and they're kind of like, everything's fine. It's not awesome, but everything's fine. But they really want to leave a dent in the world. They want to impact people in a positive way. They want to feel fulfilled while doing it, right? They just want to they want to do well. Yeah. What are some general pieces of life/career advice you'd give to a person like that?
So this comes from Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl's book, is we have to have a reason why we do what we do. Simon Sinek says, "Find your why," or start with why. What is your purpose? But I'll give you a real simple way to find it. There's 3 things you can look for, and inevitably your why is likely going to be in one of these. Technique 1 is to look for what's called the big T's. This is not when I say T's, I mean the letter T apostrophe S. And this is not my choice of words. I met with a therapist who I don't recall their name, who taught me this. Top T is look for the big trauma in your life. And we've all had it. Trauma can be physical abuse. It can be other forms of abuse. It could be financial loss. It could be a car accident. But sometimes there's these shock moments that happen in life that we'll never forget. Those moments we can say after the fact, I will never allow that to happen to me again or anyone else. That becomes a purpose statement. And for me, it was massive financial loss brought on to me by me. And when I realized that was my big trauma, or one of my big traumas in life, I devoted my life to eradicate entrepreneurial poverty. That's how I embraced it. And that's why I'm so hyped up about the stuff I do, because there's a meaning behind it. The other thing is a small T. A small T is drip trauma. Often in grade school or high school, if you were the kid that was picked on relentlessly, if your parents said, you'll never do this, some kind of drip campaign, basically, that results in an awareness like, holy crap, I ain't going to allow that to happen. I'm going to stand up against this, and I'll never allow it to happen to anyone else. There's music cranking in the background here because our office is having our huddle and we crank music. So if there is a small T in our life, that can become a stance we take. And the last purpose statement is often a childhood dream. What did we always dream we would do one day? And there's going to be a wake-up call that we say, you know what, life is passing by. I better serve this dream. It's not always that case, but it's usually one of these three. For me, my childhood dream is I wanted to be a garbage man. I still have a little desire to be a garbage man. I thought there's guys hanging off the back of a truck, a big truck, racing around, throwing stuff. I'm like, these guys are the manliest men on the planet. And I still desire to be a garbage man for about one day, because I know I don't have the stamina, and I found something else that served my life so greatly. I don't want to do that. But if there's any people that run a company like that, I would definitely volunteer for a day. So what's your childhood dream? Maybe it's time you satisfy it. And inevitably, it's one of those three things that bring about purpose. And the last thing I want to share is almost any job we're in can fulfill that. So maybe I'll never be a garbage man, but can I do something that makes me feel like a manly man or a tough guy or something like that? And so I participate in these, I'm doing a Spartan race with my son. I do these dumb runs and athletic events because that fulfills that need I have there. The work I do fulfills me serving that trauma in my life.
Wow. Thank you so much, Mike. The latest book's called Get Different, Marketing That Can't Be Ignored. And where else would you send viewers, listeners to learn more about you online, Mike?
Thanks, Ryan. The one direct, if you will, is to go to gogetdifferent.com. At gogetdifferent.com, I have all the free resources, case studies. I think we have about 70 or 80 examples of things you can instantly do that are different than everybody else, including like the Wi-Fi marketing, real easy stuff to start getting different. So gogetdifferent.com.
Awesome, Mike. Well, thank you so much once again. And I'd certainly love to continue our dialogue as we both progress, man.
Oh, I would like that too. Ryan, thank you so much.
Thanks, man.